already. I'm gonna start it off by playing the new fun half song.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
No, I wasn't all that into the Snowflake version, but the Crowder version is really good.
Back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman!
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dinner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males
Psych. Fuck them. Oh.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bang. A hell of a lot of bang. A hell of a lot of bang. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bang. A hell of a lot of bang. All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
and the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African, and the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on! Fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday! Happy birthday to me, Jew boy!
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
The Andy Kidler
Come on.
one is like terrifying.
Come on! Someone needs to
Like
pay the
opens
price
his
of
mouth
blasphemy
really
around
wide.
here.
I am a total pussy.
Yeah, and this is always fun to listen to. Anyway, we have this thing that happened today. I haven't watched it yet. This is like, in the wake of Steven Crowder, libertarian, running away from a debate with Sam Seder. This guy, Yaron Brook from the Ayn Rand Institute, it's like, oh, hey, I'll debate Sam. And, it happened this morning. I heard about it this morning, as I do usually watch the Majority Report, but I'll turn it on and sometimes I'll fall back asleep. So I didn't watch it. But I'll watch it right now. And let's get to it.
We should just say, to start this off, we were connected by Ben Burgess. I think in the wake of the Steven Crowder, I believe, debacle, or depending on your...
Oh, I want to add, if you don't know, libertarians do often, or in the past have often tried to debate Sam Seder, and it always ends up being very entertaining, and Sam usually walk circles around them. This might be different. Maybe this Yaron Brook guy is able to form coherent arguments, but we'll see.
Perspective.
It's getting kind of hot in here too.
Wonderful phenomena. You reached out to Ben and said, I would like to debate Sam, and I was down, and so here we are. Let me, well, I'm not going to make you comment on the Steven Crowder thing, because
let's move on from Steven Crowder.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, okay. So with this said, what shall we discuss libertarianism?
Well, I mean, I'll just clarify. I'm not exactly a libertarian, and I know this is probably in the weeds for you guys, but I like to differentiate myself from them. I'm not an anarchist. I'm not a complete subjectivist, as many libertarians are. But sure, we can discuss free markets, and we can discuss capitalism. We could discuss, debate them, or whatever you want to
not a
present
libertarian.
All right. Well, I mean, let's start with free markets, because I am of the opinion that there's really no such thing as a free market, and that markets only really can exist, particularly in this day and age, but in general, with governments, essentially, that governments create and structure markets, and that there really isn't a free market. It's really just a question of how the market is structured in such a way and who it benefits.
Well, what's the question is what is freedom? That is, what does it mean to say there's a free market? Freedom is the absence of coercion. It's the absence of force. It's the absence of an authority that says this is how things have to be. And if you don't abide by the rules, we put you in jail, or we shoot you, or whatever. Free market is a system in which the governments exist, but the role of government is to protect rights, to protect individual rights. It's to leave you alone, to make choices based on your values, based on your pursuits, based on your choices, to leave you alone to do all that, and to protect you from other people who want to do you harm. So you need government because you need a monopoly over the use of force. But other than that, the government should leave you free. And that's what free markets mean. It means where the government is not dictating to you how you should live, what products to buy, how much to pay your employees, etc.
But I mean, do you think we have free markets in this?
No, I don't think we've ever really had free markets. I think we've gotten close to it. I think it's gotten close to it. And I think it's possible to get free markets in the future. And I think to the extent that we get towards free markets, to that extent, we're richer and better off and more flourishing.
I want to circle back as to who the we is in that, because
that'd be great. Happy to.
But where, like, what would you look at the market that?
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt Sam, but like, do we really want like truly free markets where like people can, get away with anything without like worry of retaliation?
We have for, let's say, labor and products and whatnot, and explain to us like what you perceive as the lack of freedom there, and what you think is obviously supported and structured by the government, but still represents freedom.
Oh, there's massive amounts of lack of freedom in labor markets, for example. Minimum wage is a lack of freedom. Requiring employers to pay benefits is a lack of freedom. The restrictions on firing and hiring, many of the discrimination laws are an example of a lack of freedom. Any intervention of the government in a voluntary activity, in a voluntary exchange between two individuals, that is not coerced, that is not illegal, but
what do you mean by illegal? I mean, the only thing that should labor
be
laws
legal
are
is fraud.
the law.
That's not fraudulent. That's not fraudulent. Let's say
it's not fraudulent.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, what about things like tax breaks, or what about what about I don't know.
I don't
if
think
the
there should be
building of
tax breaks.
the-
I think that if you're going to have a tax system, taxes should, I mean, taxes should be flat and they should be as close to zero as possible, and they should
Close
be
to zero.
simple, and everybody should pay exactly the same. There should be no breaks.
there should be
And
no
you know,
progressive
corporations at the end of the day don't really pay taxes. They pass it on to consumers and they pass it on to employees. So corporate taxes make zero sense from anybody's perspective, because the economics of it is workers pay corporate taxes. It's just a hidden employment tax.
I mean, I don't think that's necessarily the case. But
Every economic study out there shows that at the end of the day, the corporate tax is either paid by consumers in higher prices or by employees in lower wages. There is no such thing. Shareholders pay very little in corporate taxes. Very
well,
little.
shareholders. That
Then
may
who
be the
pays?
case.
There is no such thing as a corporation. It's just a
well, I mean-
nexus of contracts, right?
No, I mean the corporations will pay taxes on exchanges of goods. They will actually pay money to the government. You're suggesting that they just pass on all of those expenses. They may.
But there is no such thing as a corporation, Sam. Corporations are just people, right? So who
Wait, what? Corporation? There's no such thing as corporation. It's just a like you have to like register a corporation with the government. Like that's legitimize that like creating the corporation.
which are the people within the corporation that actually pay the tax?
Well, the entity.
But
pays
the
tax.
entity, the cash sitting in the bank account of the entity is owned by shareholders, right? So if it's either
Not
shareholders
yet.
are paying the tax or they
Not-
pass it on
Not
to
yet.
Well, but it's their
anymore,
property. Legally, it's their property.
it is not their money yet until it's passed on to them, and then which case the government takes a part. I mean, no more than my money is Matt's money right now because I'm going to pay him in the future. It's not his money yet.
Well,
It
to the
is when I
extent that
pay
you have a
him,
contract with him,
When I
sure,
pay
he has a
him,
claim against you.
but then I give money to the government as well at that moment.
They have a claim against you as well.
Okay.
So it's in that
All right.
sense, it's their money.
And do you have and so you don't think that there's any type of coercion that is set up in between this relationship that is a function of government? For instance, like protecting property rights, like building infrastructure,
No.
like shielding those individuals who are surrounded by the corporation, which is a legal protection
Mhm.
that the worker may not have. Do you see that as a government intervention?
So let's take them one at a time, right? So protecting property rights, no, all the government there is doing is protecting something that's mine. It's not the government's. The government is just recognizing the fact that I created something and it is now mine and it's protecting my ability to use it. That's what property rights mean. Rights are not something the government grants you. It's something that is recognized. It's a principle of human interaction that the government is protecting.
If people didn't fight for like the government to like recognize these rights, and then the government creating laws to amend like the Constitution to give you those rights, then we wouldn't have the rights.
So rights are not things. Rights are freedoms of action. All rights mean is it's a recognition that you are free of coercion, and that the government's job is to protect that freedom. And
But-
property is the same thing. I earn something. It's mine. The government is protecting my ability to keep it.
Okay. So the government, it's not just a question of the government recognizing your right. It is a question of the government deploying its power in defense of that right. And it's also defining that it's yours, right?
It's not defining it's mine. Reality defines that it's mine. It's
Well,
a
wait a
fact
second.
that it's mine.
Wait, like the government's like the one that gives you your like property rights.
If I could use something,
Yaron, hold on for 1 second.
yeah, good.
If reality defines that something's yours,
Yeah.
How is it that what is the use of, why do we have courts that very often have to step in to define whose this is?
Because we often disagree about things out of reality, right? I mean, we have courts to decide who murdered person X.
Well, but let's
even
not talk
though
about murder.
in
Let's talk about-
in reality, somebody murdered him. Now it's a question of do we know, and there's disagreement about what happened. So there are disagreements about property rights, and that's why you have a court system. But the fact is, somebody owns this stuff, somebody created it, and therefore it is of somebody's.
But wait a second.
Before you had government,
hold on, wait.
ahead.
I want to just focus on this, because on one hand you say it is, we know who owns this because it's reality, but in fact you're also acknowledging that different people can have a different view of reality.
So we have disagreements. Yes.
Okay, we have disagreements about
Everybody lives in their own reality.
Yes, and one person's right and one person's wrong, and that's the job of the courts, is to help us decide that.
In other words, the government decides whose ownership, who's going to have that ownership right. And it's not just a function of you built this. I mean, property exists before you get there. But it can be, I created this, but we also have regimes for who owns the creation of that.
Slaves built quite a lot, for instance.
And
Yeah.
and so
That's
government
not free markets, right? We're talking about what would happen in the free market. So the fact that slave built something is I mean, the fact that slavery existed is evil and an abomination, but that's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about under freedom, what happens to property rights. And what I'm saying is that you create, Matt, you pay Matt a certain amount of money. That's his. That's a contract between you and him. You got to decide that Matt's worth X and he gets X. That is now all the government is going to do is say, okay, well, if there's a dispute between you and Matt, the government's going to say, what did Sam promise Matt? What is therefore Matt's? What is Sam's? Based on that promise. So the government is there to intervene when there's a disagreement between you. But the property rights allocation, the amount of money coming into you, and then the amount of money you give Matt is voluntarily decided between you and Matt. Matt has a property right claim against what you promised him. That's all. I mean, property rights are not that hard. They are, you work, you produce, and then you get stuff.
Yaron.
Yeah.
My father's an attorney, right? Whose entire career has been resolving these type of disputes. So
yeah,
it's
not
rather
easy.
complicated, but it's not just a question. It is the government that comes in and ultimately decides and shapes the property right. I mean,
sure. And that's why we want government. We want a government that is focused on doing a good job not shaping property rights, but recognizing property rights, doing it objectively, doing it transparently, and not getting bogged down with the millions of regulations and controls and millions of things that we have today.
Here we go.
Rather, if
No
we lived in a
regulations.
simple free market world, government would have one job. It would be relatively easy and things would be a lot simpler than they are right now.
So yeah, he just like basically gave it away. He doesn't want like any, building regulations, etc. Employers should, have the freedom to, pay their employees however much or how little they want, etc. Who cares about safety? Who cares about health code violations? Who cares about building regulations?
Now, and your father would probably not have a job.
okay.
I'm sorry, I don't mean your father, but there would be a lot fewer lawyers in the world, right?
I understand. So now, what would that look like, and how would that work? I'm very curious about that. If government was more,
Which, I mean, that's generally what libertarians believe. But he said he's not a
aspirational
libertarian.
view of the world, how would that work? How would we determine property rights, let's say?
Well, I gave you an example between you and Matt, right? So Matt would have a property right over what you paid him, right? The whatever contractually you promised to pay Matt, that's now his. And then if he went and he bought a home, there is a role for government to have a registry, but that's about it, of who owns what, so that there's not a lot of confusion about who owns a piece of land. But that's it. There's no, he would buy it from somebody. Now it's his. because he acted to gain it. He could, as a consequence, do with it basically what he wanted. It was now his home.
Could he burn plastic on it?
Well, if the plastic was not harming his neighbors, if his neighbors were being harmed by the burned plastic, then they could sue him to prevent him from burning it. So, I mean, again,
Sue
the
him in the
common law is
government's
all
about the environment.
What's that?
Sue him in the government's courts.
Well, I'm not against government. I believe
No,
governments are
I understand,
necessary, and governments are there to protect you from harm. So they would have to sue him in the government's courts and show harm in order to stop him. So governments are there to do this one thing. So I'm not against the existence of governments.
No,
I think
I
governments
understand
are
that, but I'm
wonderful
trying to
things
get
when
to
they're very
see-
limited.
Yaron, I'm trying to figure out how your world is different than the one that we're existing in. Because when you say do harm,
Well,
who defines that it's harmful?
so I'll
Because
give you an
Matt
example.
And wait a second. So Matt and I don't know without, I don't know, sort of like at birth, that the inhalation of the burning plastics are going to do me harm. And maybe there are some plastics that he's burning that actually wouldn't do me harm. The government writes regulations and makes determinations through the EPA, let's say, that it does do harm, and that's the basis of my argument that his burning does harm there. How is this
So
world
to the extent,
different from what how is that world different? How that's your fantasy world. How is
Sure.
that different from our existing one?
The difference is this, that how much you pay Matt is not an issue of harm. How much you pay Matt is not an issue of harm. That's true. Burning plastic, if it really does harm, in some sense, your world and my world look the same. If there's harm, right? The way to prove harm might be a little different, but at the end of the day, if there's harm, it will look the same. If you beat Matt up, if you whip him, right? You try to enslave him. He brought up slavery before. Then the government would intervene to stop you from doing that, both in your world and in mine, right? But where the difference happens is your choice of whether to pay Matt's health care or not. Now, I don't know if you're required to pay him because maybe you're too small of a business to do so. I don't know how many employees you would need. But at some point, you know that there are hundreds, if not thousands of regulations that dictate how you and Matt should treat each other that have nothing to do with harm, have nothing to do with force, have nothing to do with coercion, have something to do with some kind of social policy. We believe that everybody should have health care. Therefore, the best way to do it is through employers, and we will force employers to provide that. My government would never do. If you want to pay Matt health care, you guys can negotiate. Maybe he prefers to get cash. Maybe he doesn't want you to pay his health care. You would have contractually, you would decide with Matt on that relationship.
Does your government have corporations? In other words, does your government give certain benefits?
So you raised the limited liability issue. So let's deal with the limited liability issue. I mean, limited liability issue for the most part is a contractual issue. It is an issue that relates to the relationship between debt holders and shareholders. Basically, debt holders are saying, we're willing to lend you as a corporate entity money in exchange for and we know by doing this, it's in the covenants of the bond, that we can't go after the individual wealth of shareholders. That's a voluntary decision that they made. Now, the government has recognized that, called it a limited liability corporation, but it's recognized a contractual dispute. Now, you cannot lend, you can choose not to lend a corporation money because you think it's too much of a risk and you'd rather be able to actually go after the money of the shareholders. That's all it is. I mean, a big deal is made out of this, but limited liability basically is just a formalization of a market contract, a voluntary contract.
But Yaron, there may be voluntary, between the debt holder and the shareholder. But in terms of the corporation and the public, the public doesn't volunteer for any of that. I, as an S corp, have certain protections that amongst people I've never even met before.
So what are you protected from? From people outside?
I'm protected from my personal wealth being sued. If I let's say I infringe upon someone's copyright, I pay that all in pre-tax dollars. If they come after me and they sue me, I am
put aside taxes. Put aside taxes. I'm fine if you want to get rid of the limited liability that corporations have with regard to third parties.
Let's get rid of corporations.
With regard to third parties that do not have a contract with the company, sure. I mean, I don't think that's an issue.
I would also.
But the pre-tax stuff, let's put aside because, as I said, corporations don't actually pay taxes. Your employees do. But
well, I mean, they're pre-tax in relative to the pass-through.
I mean, I wish everything was pre-tax. I'm not a big fan of taxes, particularly not today.
I don't doubt that.
Yeah, well, of course he's not.
What of all the advantages that
taxes.
these entities get from society that workers don't necessarily get? Like, for instance, I am, I make my living on the internet, largely established by the government. That becomes a commercial vehicle for me. I am a trucking company, and I make my money through having high quality infrastructure in a way that I take advantage of that other people either don't have the resources to take advantage of or don't. There are, I mean, just the idea that I have that much more property that needs to be protected by the government is an advantage that I have over these, when I get into a contract theoretically with a worker, et cetera, et cetera.
So a few things. I don't believe government should build infrastructure. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think.
What? The government shouldn't build infrastructure? How do you think we have roads? How do you think we have, like, all the, power lines and stuff, the power infrastructure throughout the United States? Yeah, private industries can do that, but as like, a Texan, I would point to what happened earlier this year, whenever it was, whenever private industries were relied upon during the, ice storm that we had, that around, like, I believe 700 people died, is what is estimated. Yeah. Whenever you leave infrastructure up to private industry, people die. And this guy, Yaron Brooks, doesn't want any regulations either. So, if the government's not building infrastructure, what, like, we're gonna have dirt roads, or private industry's gonna build infrastructure and it's gonna fall apart whenever a hurricane comes, or we have an ice storm, or a heat wave. And, Texas, we get all those. So, now let's continue.
It has been necessary historically. So in my world, you're asking about my world, right? The trucking company would not be writing off of what you had paid into through it. It would have to pay for its use of infrastructure through tolls or whatever to somebody who built the road, right? Through tolls or whatever. And I think tolling is pretty.
Exactly what I just said. It would be private industries building infrastructure, and it's going to be shitty if that happens.
Simple right now. I think all infrastructure could be built and be more efficient and be more productive on a private basis. Let me just say something about the internet. I mean, this mythology that the government built the internet is truly nuts. And while it's true that government funded university programs and academics and so on that ultimately created the basis on which the internet was built. Sure, but if the government is going to fund something like university research, it funds a lot of university research. 90% of it is garbage and you never see. Once in a while, you see something that produces a result. And then we say, oh, the government did it. The government did very little of it. They funded randomly a bunch of research and some of it turned out to be good. Now, the idea that research wouldn't happen if not for the government is bizarre. Research was happening well before government started funding it. But it's true that once the government starts funding something, it crowds out everybody else. That is, you don't expect private funding of university research if the government is going to do it. some of the biggest innovations in all of human history happened at a time when government was funding exactly zero research. And that was during the 19th century in England, in the United States, where there was no government funding of any research. And we got electricity, and we got the steam engine,
Where did that
and
wealth
we
come
got
from, though?
airplanes, and so on. Matt,
Where
I'm
did-
sorry, I missed
Where
that.
did that wealth come from? That
It came from people producing and creating and building.
and a little bit of like the triangle slave trade and all of
Oh,
that.
but the slave trade is wealth destroying.
Exploitation.
I
No,
mean,
it created
no,
wealth.
the wealth trade is wealth destroying. Let's be very clear about this. The South was poor, the North was rich. It's one of the reasons the North won. Slavery
plantation
is a
owners were
Yaron,
net-
hold on for one second.
slavery from an economic perspective is you keep raising slavery, so I need to answer this question. Slavery is first of all immoral and evil and so on, but it is a net economically destructive force. It is not a productive force.
for Britain.
There would have been a lot more
hold
wealth
on.
created without slavery, and indeed much more wealth was created post-slavery than there was pre-slavery. So I know the easiest thing to do when the 19th century is raised is to say, but it's all slavery. But that's just an economic and historical fallacy.
I don't
not true.
want to get, I want to stay on where we were.
So let me finish my point about the internet. So because Matt interrupted me, the point is that the internet, yes, some infrastructure with regard to the internet was produced by government. That would have happened even without the government. That is, there's plenty of capital flowing into research throughout the last couple of centuries without government flowing into it. So yes, so you're using a private service. I assume YouTube is making a lot of money off of your show.
All right.
Good for them.
Yaron, let me just address some of those. First of all, in terms of the slavery, I have interviewed at least a half a dozen authors who have written extensively that the Northern wealth was just as tied into the free labor and created the entire cotton industry, and it had knock-on effects throughout the world, including in Britain, because you had zero input in terms of labor, and cotton at that time was incredibly labor intensive to produce. And when you have the ability to produce that labor for nothing, virtually nothing, it has knock-on effects. But
can I just say one thing about that, and then I'll let you. Slavery has existed from forever. We've had slavery.
How about the triangle slave trade?
all right, Matt, please.
Slavery has
Please, Matt,
existed.
please.
Slavery has existed forever.
Yeah, Matt is kind of like interrupting too much. So I think it's a fair point. But it's supposed to be between Sam and this guy.
The fact is that something different happened in the 19th century, and it wasn't some innovation with regard to slavery. It was the discovery and the use of capitalism, and the fact that slave labor was mitigated. If you look at the actual wealth created during the 19th century, almost none of it was created as a consequence of slavery. And I know there's a massive political agenda of painting the 19th century in that way, but it is distortive and it is wrong. And if you look at the places in the world
to say that slavery
without
happened,
slavery that has taken the same principles as capitalism developed in the 19th century in the United States, they developed wealth as fast, if not faster, than the United States. So the slavery issue is just a massive perversion and distortion, and it's sad to see that is the critique of
Okay.
a period that was.
Listen,
Yeah.
we're gonna let's just
A lot of
table
work.
this because I've literally interviewed a half a dozen people on
I
this
know,
who
and
are
they're
experts at this who disagree.
Experts at a
but we will leave.
political angle on it.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay,
I'm sure you haven't interviewed the experts.
what was that? Bringing up slavery? Is that political angle?
That would mitigate that. It would say the opposite.
I have actually talked to many libertarians before who've made a similar argument,
Okay.
but without the data. But nevertheless, let's go back to just even your description of the internet. Now, your argument is a counterfactual that's impossible for any of us to argue, which is the internet would have existed even if the government hadn't spent all this money on research, which, by the very expense of it, is indicative of it is research that they're going out there and they're laying a lot of bets on stuff that doesn't necessarily pay off, which of course capital is highly reluctant to do. We see it in the context of the COVID, right? Like you would not have had without the billions of dollars that were pumped into these private entities, without the guarantee of distribution, even if this stuff doesn't work, you wouldn't have seen the COVID vaccines developed at the same rate, and you wouldn't have seen so many of them.
Sam, none of that is true. I mean, I encourage people to look at the critiques of the entrepreneur state. I mean, you're referring to a book called The Entrepreneur State, where she lays out the case of, well, maybe you're not, but the case that the internet was funded by government. I encourage people to look at the critiques of the entrepreneur state and look at exactly what was funded, what was not funded, and what would have happened if free market, if those elements of that are still free in our markets hadn't stepped in and turned the internet into what we know of it today. I don't believe that's true of COVID either. The fact is that the only reason we have a vaccine today is the two companies were set up completely in the marketplace, not funded by government, Moderna and BioNTech in Germany, set up trying to do mRNA, trying to create mRNA technologies for all kinds of, and they were ready. They were ready.
Moderna was heavily funded by the NIH prior to this.
No, it wasn't funded by the NIH. Again, research on which Moderna later was funded by the NIH. Sure. Again, if the government is funding all research, you're not going to be able to find a company.
It's not funding all research. It's funding the research that is the longest shots. I mean,
no, that's not true.
Yaron,
it's exactly the opposite. So I'll give you one example. I'll give you an example of exactly what you're saying. When COVID was, when we discovered there was COVID out there, there were many researchers and scientists out there who wanted to jump in and try to get funds to do research and to develop drugs relating to COVID, in March of last year. And yet they couldn't, because the government bureaucracy was such that they couldn't get the grants, the grant authority wasn't there, they couldn't switch the authority from what they were doing to something else. The people who jumped in were the private sector. Now it's true that the government stepped in and said, we'll buy everything you produce. As if in a free market that couldn't have happened, right? As if in a free market, insurance companies don't have an incentive to do exactly that. I know you'll pull a face, but we can lay down a scenario where profit-seeking, profit-maximizing, evil corporations actually seek to buy as many vaccines as they can because it's cheaper than actually paying for treatment in hospital, which is what would have happened in a free market. But look, we can argue about the factual and the counterfactual. To me, the deeper issue about free markets is not, can we draw these scenarios? Because I think, if you gave me enough time, I could draw you the exact scenario of what would happen under COVID and a free market, and a lot fewer people die than under the 600,000 that died in the world in which we have the government involved in it. The government was an obstacle at every step of the way. It didn't do its job. It didn't test, screen and isolate, which is its job. It wouldn't let private enterprise produce tests until it was way too late. The CDC insisted on making the test themselves, and it was a lousy test. And the vaccine distribution is a joke, centrally planned, was a complete abomination, could have been much more efficient if it was done in the free market. We could go over all of these in great detail, and I could present a counterfactual, and you'll say it's counterfactual, so who cares? But the essential is this. I don't believe that the government telling you what research to do. I don't believe the government building infrastructure. I don't believe the government getting involved in our lives is moral or right or just. The only government is force, government is coercion. The only time coercion and force is justified is in self-defense. And it has no business, the government has no business, the majority has no business in telling me what values to pursue, what education to get, what research to do. That are choices that need to be left to individuals and not to central planners.
All right.
Just want to make a comment on one thing this guy, on what this guy said just then. He does realize that, like, the reason that the government, like, was obstructing, like, coronavirus research and stuff was, because of Donald Trump, who was exhibiting like a lot of the characteristics that he says like a government should do, like deregulation and stuff. Trump went wild with deregulation and, you know, giving corporations and stuff everything that they needed. But I don't know. It just seems like a kind of a wild take.
Yaron, I'll get to the morality of this because, we may have a different value system, but there's a couple of things I just want to go back to what you were saying about the.
Oh, yeah, like it wouldn't be the same if it was like, you know, more socialist government, similar to like what, you know, myself and Sam would want.
Infrastructure. The government doesn't need to pay the infrastructure. They could charge, the private entities could charge tolls for corporations who you would say at that point would then pass it on to take out of their workers' pay and charge to consumers, I would imagine, right? There's no reason why the toll is any different than a tax in that regard.
Well, any expense, a toll is just an expense, right?
Okay.
And
All right,
there's
so
no
fair
reason
enough.
a tax is not any kind of expense, right?
But
Somebody has
we
to pay.
also know that one of the things that, and maybe this is just a question of immorality to you, but we have roads that go to just about everywhere in this country. And we have, for instance, mail delivery, you can send a letter regardless how remote you are.
We even have
from one
bridges
place
to
another
nowhere.
place.
Right?
We have bridges to nowhere. It is true. There are definitely abuses within our system, like there is in any system, whether it's corporate or not. But the whole point is that private corporations will only seek profit. We know many, many stories. I'm sure you must know. Have heard stories of medical inventions that are built that are maybe helpful to a very narrow amount of people, and their private corporations don't support it. I can tell you that living in an area where there was a tremendous amount of Lyme disease, there was a Lyme vaccine that existed 40 years ago that was about 70% effective, but it was just not profitable for the company at the time. And maybe there's one coming back now with some government intervention and support of that because the profit motive is such that it wasn't compelling enough. So we're going to see a Lyme vaccine in a couple of years now.
That's really bizarre, Sam, because if you think about the number of drugs that are being researched and being produced and being investigated, and the number the FDA approves, and the cost that the FDA, the amount of money that the FDA causes a drug to cost these days, the idea that it's private enterprise that is restricting drug supply and not the FDA and not government restricting drug supply is bizarre. And the fact is that, for example, I'll give you a quick example. There was a drug that people who had arthritis swore by this because they live in excruciating pain, and there was one drug that would actually reduce their pain. And the government stepped in and said, you know what, but 10% of you have an increase in heart disease, therefore we're withdrawing the drug, and it's illegal. Even if you choose to take on the risk of heart disease to reduce this excruciating pain, we, the government, have decided you cannot access this drug because we, the government, know what's good for you. So instead of me and my doctor making a decision based on risk that is personal to me, the central planner now dictates, no, 10% risk is too much, so the drug is off the market.
Wow. He thinks that, like, if there's like a medication that gives you a 10% risk of heart disease, then it should be allowed. That's a pretty big chance.
The reason we have so few drugs in this country is because the FDA has an incentive to be super risk averse. It is going to be blamed for any damage that happens, but never blamed for a drug that's released that's actually going to cure something or actually help us. This is all completely twisted. Profit motive is what gets us more drugs, not less drugs.
What is that drug?
Oh, I forget now, but it was like 10 years ago. It was on the market. It was a hugely popular drug, and they withdrew it because there was an increased risk, the 10% increased risk of heart disease in those receiving it.
What do you do about the problem that we had with, let's say, OxyContin, where doctors were making these decisions with their patients, but because of the intense profit motive and because of, frankly, in some respects, the failure of the FDA and the fact that the statutory protections were not strong enough, in my opinion, that we ended up having this use and ultimately abuse of OxyContin that led to a massive opioid epidemic.
So I, for one, believe that drugs should be legal. And if people want to abuse them, they have every right to abuse them. It's sad.
But the point is, the doctors gave excuse me, wait. The doctors, you said this should be a decision between the doctor and the patient. And I'm suggesting to you that a significant part of the overdose that we see in the addiction was not a function of people making a choice to be addicted or to abuse drugs, but was rather a profit motive on the part of Purdue and subsidiaries.
Sam, have you ever had surgery? I'm just curious. Have you ever had surgery and been in intense pain?
I have been in intense pain. I have friends.
And when the doctor offered you, when the doctor offered you an opioid, what did you do?
Let me just finish.
Go ahead.
The profit motive drove these salespeople and this company to make doctors believe that this was not addictive in the way that the doctors understood OxyContin could be, or that this type of opioid could be. You're shaking your head. I mean,
I'm shaking my head because no doctor believed it wasn't addictive, and particularly they couldn't believe.
Yeah, but they didn't tell the patients that, like, this is like very, well known by now that like the doctors were like intentionally like prescribing higher like doses of OxyContin on purpose so they can make more money.
It after they actually saw their patients come back over and over and again to ask for more. So maybe initially you're right, but at some point you have to ask.
We have a tremendous amount of corrupt doctors in this country,
and we have a lot of corrupt doctors in this country.
That to allow, listen,
he wants them to be allowed to be corrupt.
I know.
2 minutes.
I know.
You have said we need to allow doctors to have an unfettered relationship with their patient, and all of these doctors knew they were giving a highly addictive drug to their patients, and they turned the other direction, which led to incredible.
I think that's right, but look,
people died. People died.
So why am I suggesting we should trust doctors? Yeah, because I think we live in a system where we encourage people not to take personal responsibility, doctors and patients not to take personal responsibility for the decisions that they make, and we encourage corruption. I think because we have an SEC, for example, we have more corruption in financial markets. I think because we have an FDA, we have more corruption.
Let's say that
we have more corruption among doctors because doctors now rely on guidance from above rather than making personal decisions. Now, let me just finish this point about OxyContin. Look, when a doctor offered me, this is years ago, when a doctor offered me opioids after back surgery because I was in intense pain, I said, maybe not, right? These are addictive, right? I knew that. You knew that. Everybody knows opioids are addictive. Everybody knows opioids are addictive. And what we do is we shrug off.
Who's ever been addicted to that pain medication?
Yeah, and they rationalize it away, but they knew what they were doing. They knew what they were getting into.
So the people that were prescribed, overdoses of OxyContin knew what they were doing, and they deserve to die, according to this guy.
Really?
And it reduced their pain, so they was excusable, and they could, they could justify it to themselves because the pain was going away. But it doesn't take much research to discover. You just do a Google search, even 5, 6, 10 years ago, and you would have discovered that any one of these drugs was addictive. We don't want people to take personal responsibility. We don't want doctors to have personal responsibility about the decisions they make.
Let me ask you
We
this.
want to give that decision authority to some
Yaron,
guiding authority like the
is
FDA.
the mRNA vaccines, are they safe?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I mean, if I Google it, I can find just as many hits. Well, no,
Yeah,
but
you're
you're saying that it's...
use your mind
I
a
just
little
wanna be
bit.
clear
You
here.
can differentiate
Yaron,
between the
listen,
conspiracy theory nonsense and the
Yaron.
reality.
I can differentiate between conspiracy theory and reality. Sam can differentiate between conspiracy theory and reality, but not everybody is in tune with medication or just the wacko shit that right-wingers say on the internet. So they might see some conspiracy thing saying that the vaccine is gonna kill you, and they'll believe it, and they won't get vaccinated, and then they'll get coronavirus and then die.
I just want to be clear on what your argument is here. Your argument is that the literally tens of thousands of deaths that we've had as a function of addiction that started with Oxycontin, cotton, you're arguing that the doctors were unscrupulous and...
Oh, and it's their fault, too, if they die.
The patients failed to understand the implications of the medicine they were taking. And that, okay, this is where our worldviews really diverge. Because I don't believe that we can have a functioning society where every patient each has to know the implications of every medication they're taking so they can fact check the doctor who apparently is willing to be unscrupulous to the extent that they can because they're aided and abetted and encouraged to be corrupt by the existence of government agencies.
I don't disagree with you. That would be a rotten world, but I don't believe that's the kind of world you would get. I believe that is a world that we have gotten because of the kind of role we've allowed government to take. We have delegated to government authorities so much of our personal responsibility, both as doctors, as pharmaceutical companies, and as individuals, that yes, you cannot just take the world as exists today and snap your fingers and yes, everything happens. Incentives matter. And when you create perverse incentives, which is what the FDA has created, you get perverse results. And that's what we got. And you're getting the same with mRNA right now. The reason there's so much conspiracy theories about this is because people have lost trust in our government, and you get one central authority saying thumbs up, thumbs down. And we're living through that. It's a sad and horrific state that we have right now. Well, we're not trusting scientists because scientists I believe be members of some kind of elite.
You've just described the entire opioid epidemic as a function of unscrupulous
I think it's a function of the system that we have today, which involves the FDA and unscrupulous doctors. Yes.
And ignorant patients. But you're suggesting in the absence of the FDA and the government that everyone would trust Pfizer or that they would all do the right thing because why? How would the incentive structure be different?
Because think about first of all, think about what happens if you don't. Think about how you go out of business and how much you suffer when you go out of business if you screw it up. It's a big deal. But let's
wait a second.
Let's take that world.
That because that's an interesting thing because I'm thinking about the builders of that building in Florida.
Sure.
Now maybe they would.
That was their.
If we knew who they were, maybe they're still in business. But it also suggests that.
Yeah, that's the people that were living in the building. According to this guy, what happened? I think it's fine. Well, this guy probably thinks that the people that were living in the building, it's their fault that the building, collapsed and they died inside of it.
The way that corporations, which we know, and you've made it clear, are just people who have a legal protection. Those people, 10 years down the road, they're gone. that CEO and
Sure, and
that
that's
C-suite,
why.
they're gone and they've profited from it. So if the company goes bankrupt because I mean, the Sacklers made billions.
Yeah,
And
they
if
don't
I
have
was
them
to-
any. They don't have those billions anymore.
Oh,
And
they
might.
do. They
No, they
very
don't.
much
They don't.
do.
They don't, and
Very
they're
much
gonna,
do.
and they were
They
pretty well
very
off
much
even
do.
before this.
I
But look,
literally just interviewed the guy who did the story on the Sacklers. They very much do have billions of dollars.
but again, I don't think they are the only party responsible for what happened there, and a lot of people are getting off the hook on it. But
Then everybody gets off the hook. Like the
no,
point is,
life,
there's no incentive
there's no
structure.
guarantee in life. Look, we have the system you want or close to it, and a building inspector went
No,
into
we
that
don't.
building and returned every 10 years. The government sent a building inspector into the building in Miami, and they still didn't get it. They still blew it up.
No,
And I
the
would
private,
argue
the private owners of that building did not
yeah, but
respond
that's
to
the
it.
point. The point is this: that in a world in which the government doesn't have a building inspector, let me finish this thought, and then I have to run, unfortunately, right? Because I don't have a lot of time. Let me finish this thought. In a world in which I imagine there are many people that have a clear interest in keeping the building from collapsing. Certainly the owners of the building and the people who live there. Now, look, mistakes are going to happen in any system. Mistakes are going to happen, right? No system is going to guarantee that no buildings ever collapse. No system is going to guarantee that no people ever get sick from a drug or sick from food that they
They can
eat.
try.
But I
At least.
like the incentives of the building owners, the people who own the condos, more than I like the incentive of the building inspector from the government. Now, it didn't work in this case.
Man.
It didn't work in this case, but I said that sometimes things are not going to work. But you know what? I also like the incentive of, in a free market, not in the world in which we live now, where everybody hides behind the government, of the insurance company that insured that building. Because they've got a lot of claims that they're going to have to pay now, and they're going to take a big hit. They, in a free market, they would have sent an inspector. Now, in the world we live in today, they don't, because they rely on the government inspector, which probably was not a good idea.
No,
because
the government inspector
didn't work.
made it quite clear that there were problems there. The private inspectors,
Not
I'm sorry,
20
Yaron.
years ago when the building was built with a basis.
I'm sorry. The private inspectors also, the engineering company that was in there, the private owners of that building made the decision not to fix it. Now, were there stricter government regulations?
Then why are we worried about it? Then they made a decision and they suffered
What?
the consequences.
Because there's a
What? Why are we worried about the building collapsing? They decided not to listen and suffer the consequences. Yeah, well, regular people, the people in the condos aren't experts on like building integrity and stuff.
there's 100
people who made a decision, who made a bad decision, and suffer the consequences of it. I'm not justifying the building collapsing. I'm saying that people make decisions. If I make a decision to walk into the street without looking, should the driver be limited in his capacity to drive because I made a stupid decision? The point is that there are, what you want is for the people who make the decision to suffer, to benefit from the consequence of their actions. If I
I don't know, like, if somebody walks into the road and you have enough agency to like stop and you don't, I mean, isn't that like still murder?
make a decision to take Oxycontin, knowing it's addictive and I become addicted from it, that's my problem, not yours and not mine, and not anybody else's.
It's like, they gave me the chance to kill somebody, so I'm going to.
I believe people should pay for the mistakes that they make.
I think that we have gotten to the rub between us. That for you, the morality, as far as I can tell, is that consequences, if they can be directly attributed to a mistake that individuals make, that's just the way it is. For me, my morality, I guess, to use your term, is that society should try and diminish and mitigate the suffering of other people.
Yeah, that's a big difference between us. My view is if you want to mitigate the suffering of other people, you should be able to do that freely. to force me to help you mitigate the suffering of other people because it's your value. But if it's not mine, that is immoral. It's immoral for you to impose your morality on me, even if you're in the majority.
I have to say too that not every, but many of the conversations I've had with libertarians, the ones who are more,
they go exactly the way
coherent,
this one
and I
has.
count you as one of those, ultimately comes down to there's a certain frustration that they have that the vast majority of Americans subscribe to the idea that society should mitigate mistakes that people make, like things like, and that society should be designed that way, and that it is frustrating for people like you to live in a country where most people feel that way.
Oh, absolutely. We try to educate people not to feel that way. But yes, I would like to live in a place where people are free to aggregate their efforts together to mitigate problems that they see fit on a voluntary basis. I don't believe in coercion. I just don't believe in force. I don't believe anybody has a right to force somebody else
except
to do
to
something
protect property.
That is protect. I'm all for protection. I'm protecting your life. Police should protect your life. I think property is an extension of your life. But property is part of your life. I mean, you can't separate the two.
Wait.
If I need to produce stuff in order to live.
What about government protecting your life if you if the building falls? Like, because not every one of the 150 people who died in there made that decision. Sure. The children didn't. They were shareholders of a building, and they had representatives.
The shareholders are owners, and they're responsible for the decision making the decisions they make. But it's to protect your life from somebody else using force against you. It's not from nature. I mean, a hurricane might blow through here. I'm in Puerto Rico right now, and I don't expect the government to protect me from the hurricane.
But the government could certainly help you recover from the hurricane, and if there is like a natural disaster coming, the government should help you get out of there if you choose to.
I do expect the government to protect me from somebody trying to shoot me in the street.
Did the government help putting electricity back on there?
Well, the government destroyed the electricity grid, and then it rebuilt it in as bad of a shape as it was originally. So the next hurricane, it will go out again.
Was that drug, incidentally, people are saying it was Vioxx. Is that the case?
Vioxx, yes. Thank you. It was Vioxx.
Yeah. My understanding is that was a recall that they did themselves, but maybe that's incorrect.
No, it's the FDA forced them to.
Vioxx had been taken by some 4 million Americans. Out of those patients who took Vioxx, the arthritis drug may have caused approximately 140,000 heart attacks.
Whoa. That's a lot. And this guy's like, like 10%. Wow. Well, you said like 10% earlier.
Resulting in an estimated 60,000 deaths. This is according to an FDA investigation. I mean,
may have caused.
May have.
Notice may. I mean, imagine if they did that with the vaccine. May have, and also, why can't I make that decision? Why can't I make decision whether I want to take the risk of a heart attack and
reduce? You're a much smarter guy than most people who have the ability to assess all these different drugs.
I don't assume that. I actually have a high opinion of most human beings and think that they can make decisions for themselves. And I think it's the philosopher king mentality. The philosopher king mentality of Plato, where you get to decide for other people what's good for them.
Yaron, do you have kids?
I do. I have two boys.
I mean, when you have little kids, it's a little bit tough to be doing all that medical reading, right?
It's absolutely tough. It's absolutely tough. And part of the reading is finding a good pediatrician so that somebody you can trust who's not going to deceive you. And that's not easy. I'm not saying life's easy.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
No, it's not about fingers crossed. It's not about fingers crossed. But okay, well, I do need to run.
I know. I appreciate it.
I appreciate the time, and I appreciate the stability. Thank you.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was. Bye.
All right, well, there you have it, folks. I mean, I think that was, I thought, incredibly civil.
They got to switch them
and
over.
I think Yaron ultimately presented a vision for life, what it would be like. Bone up on your drug manufacturing, folks, and on your medical treatments,
And
Never
blown up
mind.
on the buildings that you live in. You may not be made aware that there are structural issues. You may not know, but you should know. You should know, right?
Sam, you were free to go check all those buildings in Miami to help those people on your own if you wanted to. Why are you trying to make Yaron help you on that?
Your own. I finally got it right by the end. But yes. So, folks, your lesson for today: bone up on medicines, bone up on medical procedures, structural engineering. While you're at it, mechanics, you wouldn't want to buy a car that is going to blow up on you. Also, folks, bone up on your capacity to do data across, because Matt, you got to get a spreadsheet going to determine that there is a relationship, possibly, between Vioxx and those 60,000 deaths. So I want a spreadsheet.
Those people knew what they were doing, Sam. Come on. You know you might have a heart attack, surprise, if you take Vioxx.
It's just, consequence
So
of
you're
freedom.
telling me that there is, doc, this is my conversation with my doctor, because the doctor's going to be like, I'm going to prescribe to you something that there's a lot of evidence out there. Now, of course, this evidence doesn't exist until people start dying, so you can't really know until the people start dying. But if you are, let's say, a couple of years into Vioxx being out there, and you're the doctor, and you say, look, here's the deal. It's only about 2.5%, 3%.
That assumes
3
that
out of
doctor's telling you
100
the
people
truth.
I prescribe this to are going to have a heart attack.
Thereabouts.
But only half.
That's
here it is.
Also, if doctors are corrupt,
That's
he might
pretty
not even
scary.
tell you that. He might just say, "Hey, look at this great new opioid they made that isn't addictive. Try this."
But right. And then the best doctors the non-corrupt doctors, they'll be the ones that rise to the top, and the corrupt doctors will also rise to the top because people who want the addictive substance will just go to them.
Well,
folks.
Well, it's probably enough of that. Yeah, this guy says he wants to the guy said he wanted to differentiate himself from libertarians, but just about every talking point he had was exactly what libertarians say. He just had a bit more data behind his arguments, but it was all just oh, we don't want the government imposing any rules or regulations. Corporations, they should be able to pay whatever they want. That's a contract between them and their workers, etc. And, if a worker, agrees and ends up getting hurt in the job, well, that's just their fault. That that's just a decision that they made. They should hold that. Nobody should be held accountable for it but them. And if you rent out a condo in a building in Florida and it collapses, that's your fault. Anyway, there's another thing I wanted to get to tonight. Let's see. There was the TYT thing. I can type right now. Where is it? I should have prepared it. Oh yeah.
So guys, we're going to do a bonus.
Let me change the title. Yeah, this is well, this is going to be them reacting to some comments that Glenn Greenwald made. Basically, he's backing up Jimmy Dore, who made some very sexist comments about Anna Kasparian, without, thinking anything was wrong with it. And whenever Anna had like privately called him out on it, he accused her of blackmail. So Glenn Greenwald is backing Jimmy Dore up with that, saying that Anna blackmailed him, but it's really not, and we'll see.
Episode here about Glenn Greenwald's attack on Anna. It was vicious and it was completely false, and I'm going to prove it to you guys. I'm going to show you the tapes, and it's, first of all, really disappointing and sad to see, because Glenn, I thought, was a real journalist, and we've praised him on the show many times, and he did some amazing stories in the past, including, of course, the Edward Snowden story, and I think Edward Snowden's an American hero. This is a great story about Brazil. But after watching this, I was further heartbroken, because I think now I'm not really sure about any of his past stories. Did he hide evidence on purpose in all of those? I don't know. There's no way of knowing because of what you're about to see, right? And it should be noted, we're doing this in the bonus episode because we do an actual news program. We do tons of stories every day about things that matter in the world. And we fight for things like the $15 minimum wage. I've even set up 3 different organizations, and they've been relatively successful. I helped co-found Justice Democrats. There's 10 Justice Democrats in Congress right now. So we try to be constructive, right? Other people spend almost all of their shows attacking fellow progressives, doing personal drama, talking about their feelings, and almost never talk about the actual news, right? So in this case, I'm forced into responding because the smears were so over the top and so false and outrageous. So now this revolves around Jimmy Dore's claim that Anna tried to blackmail him with a DM that she sent him. So now Jimmy sexually harassed Anna while she was here, and that was all uncovered through this whole process. Now, you're gonna see that with your own eyes in a second, but I need you to know that context. So when Anna says, and at that point, Anna sends the DM when Jimmy's already attacking her personally. And by the way, we're gonna show you a clip of that later as well, so you'll see that evidence. And so Anna's super frustrated because they keep calling her these outrageous things that she's paid off by NATO and all these other things. And Glenn claims that he's really outraged by anyone saying that somebody is paid by someone without evidence, yet he's never asked for evidence of any of us being paid by NATO. What an insane, absurd charge. But as long as it's his friends and his buddies that he wants to advocate for, there's completely different standards, right? So in the midst of that frustration, Anna sends a DM, and now they've characterized it as blackmail. And I want to actually read the end of that DM for you guys so you know what the reality is, right? And it's in there. They've all put it in their videos. They read it to you guys, and then they tell you something that isn't true. So let's read the end of that DM. She says, I've been holding back, letting you run your mouth nonstop as if you're some sort of warrior for what's good in the world. That is going to change. Now, in blackmail, the way that it works is, hey, I'm going to do something unless you give me something. You give me a duffel bag full of money in a parking lot, or you do this, or you do that, or you don't do something. It's an ultimatum, right? Here, there's no ultimatum. She says, I'm gonna do it, right? There's no like, oh, okay, maybe not, maybe this. If you do this, then I won't do that. No, she says, I'm mad because you are pretending to be a warrior for good, when in reality, I know because of my personal experience that you're a dirtbag. So I'm gonna let people know you're a dirtbag because that's who you are, because you're going out there and attacking me personally. This has nothing to do with politics anymore. You're saying I'm paid off by nefarious people, all these different things, and including sexual attacks, et cetera, as you're about to see, right? So I'm mad and I'm telling you, okay, if you're gonna attack us, then finally, I've been holding, and we did, guys. We held for so long, and we only do these segments after they go for a month straight. Finally, we'll correct the record because we have a news program to do, right? So she says that. So as you can see, already out of the gate,
Not too loud, is
the
it?
idea of blackmail is absurd. It's totally absurd. It's not true on the facts as we start. Okay, now let's get to Glenn. So he sees that. Instead, he says this.
You see what she did there? Now, since this DM was sent, Jimmy anticipatorily went and showed his audience this threat, which is what this is, that she sent him. A threat that she's going to accuse him of sexual harassment.
No, that's not what happened at all. And there's no anticipatory anything. Jimmy just came out and admitted that he did it, right? And by the way, some of the things he said in that account were not even true. So Anna wasn't gonna say that, okay? And so she said, if you're saying personal things, I'm allowed to say personal things. And he's like, oh yeah, I'll tell you all the sexual harassment I already did. So instantly, Glenn starts out with a totally wild and incorrect way of phrasing it and characterizing it. So then he goes on and says this.
He gave his own version of events about what happened. She then went on her own program and made good on her threat.
But wait a minute, Jimmy already said he did it. So what do you mean made good on her threat? It's already public for the whole world to see. Almost every show's talked about.
Yeah, Jimmy basically admitted to sexually harassing Anna, and it's just supposed to be okay, I guess, for, well, at least according to people like Glenn Greenwald and Jimmy Dore.
About it, that's in this progressive sphere, unfortunately, right? And I hate that the clip is replayed. Now we're gonna have to replay the clip in a little bit to show you what a liar Glenn Greenwald is, right? But she made good on her threat. Okay, but wait, she said that's gonna change. So where's the thread? Where's the part where she says, hey, I don't like your political opinions. If you don't stop, then I will do this. No, Jimmy just goes out and goes, oh, you're gonna attack me? I caught feelings. Oh, that's it, everybody, all my cult, go out and tell everybody I caught feelings, right? So I'll tell you already, I'm a sexual harasser, right? And then Glenn takes that and goes, oh, you see how Anna is the one who did the threat and then carried out the threat. But Glenn, you left out the part where Jimmy already admitted it. But wait, it gets way worse. Here's more.
I have no idea what took place back in 2014 when they were working together because I wasn't there. But here's what so I can't comment on whether anyone did anything wrong back then.
You have no idea what took place, and you can't tell if anyone did anything wrong.
Jimmy said what happened.
All right, well, this is the clip that everyone has already seen. It's inconceivable that Glenn didn't see it. And if he chose not to look at it, well, that would also be absolute negligence if you're a so-called journalist. So he couldn't tell if anybody did anything wrong. Let's watch.
Anna Kasparian used to dress, when I worked there, unbelievably inappropriately for a newsroom. She looked like she was going to a rave. The skirt, one time she came into the newsroom with a skirt so short. It wasn't a pencil skirt. It was like a fluffy one too, but so short that she bent over in front of me and I literally saw her ass and her thong. She's wearing a thong. I literally saw it. Like everybody saw it. And I go, hey, Anna, nice news skirt. And everybody laughed. Like they laughed louder than I thought they would. And so it humiliated her. She got humiliated in the middle of the newsroom, and I did it.
And I did it. Now, Glenn, you said, I have no idea what took place. Well, your friend, the one you're defending and hiding the evidence for, told you he did it, and he told you exactly what took place according to his own account. And you, I don't know. I don't know what happened. What am I, a journalist? I don't know.
Spider-Man
everybody's
gummies.
already seen the clip. Oh, I don't know what the clip is. I have no idea what took place. And by the way, there's two really important things here. One is, why is he calling it a news skirt? Because the humiliation comes in, you're not a real news person. You're just here for all the men to leer at you. That's why I looked up your skirt and had a big laugh about it. Glenn, you're not sure what happened? You're not sure if, what did he say? Whether anyone did anything wrong back then, you're not sure about it. You're a journalist, and you just saw that. He never put that clip, he never mentioned that clip anywhere in his video. He never talked about it. My God, Glenn, what else have you hid from your readers all of these years? If you're doing a story as a journalist on this and you hide the most important evidence, what else have you hidden? So the second part that's important about the Jimmy clip is they're still laughing. This isn't something you did wrong and you apologized for 12 years ago, 7 years ago. Oh my God, we shouldn't have said that on air. This is not an on-air thing. This is a workplace thing, okay? You do this at work. That is textbook sexual harassment. Anyone who defends that, I don't know what you are, but you're definitely not a progressive. And then, not only did you do it back then, you're still having a great time about it. He's laughing, Steph is laughing. We humiliated her. But Glenn's not sure what happened. He doesn't know at all. What is he, a journalist? No, of course not. So there's a lot more where that came from. So now Glenn makes up something, just fabricates a fact. Let's watch.
If anything, she was his boss at the Young Turks. And yet, according to her own version of events, and according to Jimmy's as well, she never once voiced a complaint about being sexually harassed by Jimmy Dore in the workplace.
But wait a minute, Anna wasn't Jimmy's boss at all. So Anna's become executive producer of the show later, but I was Jimmy's boss. So why didn't you check with us? Hey, you're supposed to be a journalist. Hey, was Anna Jimmy's boss at the time? No, you just chose to make up that non-fact. And I found that so curious. Why fabricate something for no reason at all? It's just gonna embarrass you, right? But then I saw this old clip of Jimmy basically threatening other people here, right? And when I say old clip, I mean this is after the controversy began, right? And he's trying to make sure now desperately, oh my God, I don't want more things to come out. And he said this.
She never, in the course of this 7 years, uttered a peep about claiming to have been sexually harassed by Jimmy Dore. In fact, in 2016, as I just showed you, they had a very amicable exchange. He was wishing her well on her mother's surgery, and she said, "Thank you so much, and it's so great to see how much you're kicking ass." That's not the exchange that one would expect from someone who actually feels like they were maliciously and systematically sexually harassed by someone else, but maybe it is. Maybe that did happen.
Okay, so we played a clip there of Glenn continuing. I'll get back to the Jimmy clip in a second. But in that Glenn clip right there, he says, maybe it happened, maybe. He doesn't know, he doesn't know. He said, in all these years, she never uttered a peep. Guys, you've seen sexual harassment stories. It's #1 go-to maneuver of people defending sexual harassers. Why didn't she come out before? Why was she a decent person and didn't want that guy fired? She made the mistake of thinking he's a friend. By the way, if you've been sexually harassed, if you're a woman or a man out there, say it right away, okay? Because they're gonna use it against you later. They're gonna send some sick guy like Glenn Greenwald after you later and go, why didn't she say a peep before? Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. Even though he already knows that his friend admitted it on tape. Okay, but I wanna go back. Do we have the Jimmy clip? So this is a quick clip.
And yeah, like another thing, anybody on the left knows that like most of the time, women don't like come out immediately. Anybody on the left knows that. But for some reason, that's a mystery to Glenn Greenwald, why she didn't.
About where Jimmy's on another show, and it explains why in the world Glenn would be making up the fact that Anna was his boss when she wasn't. Let's watch.
So now if anybody else at the Young Turks comes out and say that I harassed them, Anna's gonna get sued.
Oh, I get it now. Okay, so if anybody else at the Young Turks says I sexually harassed them, they better not, because I won't be in trouble. Anna will be in trouble. You better not say it. That's the Jimmy Dore like weirdo, like rage, right? He's threatening everybody here, all the women who worked here. And he's saying, remember, I'm gonna get Anna in more trouble. Remember how I sexually harassed her? And remember how I humiliated her and laughed about it? Well, I'm gonna do it to you guys, and I'm gonna do it to more to Anna, because Anna, I'm pretending Anna was my boss. Now, Jimmy knows Anna wasn't his boss. He knows that for a fact. Hey, Glenn, did you ask Jimmy if Anna was the boss? You didn't ask anybody, you just made it up. Oh, but if Anna was the boss, then Jimmy's point might be an interesting one, but Anna wasn't the boss. So I don't know if Glenn lied on purpose so that he could protect Jimmy from further sexual harassment claims. I don't know of any. I hope he didn't do it. I hope to God he didn't do it, but God, I don't know anything about Jimmy. I don't know anything about Glenn. I thought I knew these guys, and apparently none of us ever knew them at all. Monsters. So now, as you saw there in the earlier clip, Glenn said, she didn't speak out. It's basically, he seems like he's blaming her. He does the standard caveats in the video. I'll be way more fair than him. So in the video, he says a couple of times, yeah, it happens with women. Sometimes it happens with women that they don't say anything about sexual harassment, they come out later. But in the case of Anna, maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. What do I do? Would I watch it? No, I didn't watch it. So in case you were unaware of it, here's Jimmy again admitting.
She got humiliated in the middle of the newsroom, and I did it.
Glenn, you call yourself a journalist? Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. The hatchet job from a guy who I thought was a journalist in an earlier career, who now has become some weirdo right-winger. And if you say, oh, no, he's actually really left-wing, but he just happens to go on Tucker Carlson and Jimmy Dore's show, and he happens to support all these right-wing talking points. It just all happens to be, and he never happens to criticize right-wing. Hold on, I've got that for you too, because Glenn also admitted what he thinks about certain situations later in this video. But now we're gonna go back to his smears against Anna. Let's keep going.
That fact that someone doesn't come forward doesn't mean nothing happened. But what she's doing here is as grotesque as it is transparent.
So it doesn't mean that it didn't happen, but you see that, but she's grotesque. Jimmy is not grotesque for all the things that you saw. Anna's grotesque. This is textbook blaming the victim. Textbook. He continues.
It's basically blackmailing him, saying if you continue to criticize us, I'm gonna accuse you of sexual harassment.
I already showed you that it was no such thing. But Glenn, you're supposed to be a lawyer, and I get it. You're no longer a journalist, you're an advocate, and you've decided that you're gonna advocate for this monster, Jimmy Dore. I don't know why you made that decision, I don't care, because I have no respect for you left at all.
Yeah, so it's like a weird hill to die on. I mean, I guess Glenn is, trying to figure out his place, and this place seems to be helping these, pseudo-leftist, he himself being a pseudo-leftist, but get into this sort of reactionary pipeline. And it's just really sad. Glenn used to be really good.
Okay, but you're a lawyer and you're doing an interesting job of advocating here. You don't know that blackmail is a very serious criminal charge, and you just said that on tape with no evidence at all. In fact, you hid the evidence of the actual sexual harassment from your audience. You see, if you're in his audience and you're a reader, understand from now on, you have no idea what Glenn didn't tell you. The overwhelming evidence that might be on the other side, but Glenn wasn't advocating for that position. He wanted to advocate for his own opinions and his perspective. And in this case, he wanted to say, well, sexual harassment, is it really that bad? I mean, but the victim is grotesque. The victim is grotesque. You just saw it with your own eyes. By the way, there are really grotesque people in the world. There's literal Nazis in the world. They write at the Daily Stormer. So interestingly enough, they also wrote about this story. Can we put it up on the screen here? I'm sorry that we have to subject you to the headline above that as well. But remember, these are literal Nazis. And they run with the headline, Anna Kasparian blackmailing Jimmy Dore with Me Too hoax. Hoax. You saw it on tape for exposing the Young Turks pro-war agenda. We also don't have a pro-war agenda. Every part of this story is a lie. Okay, now, just because the Nazis agree with Glenn and Jimmy, and by the way, other people, it doesn't mean that Glenn and Jimmy are Nazis. We're fair. You look, Hitler was a vegetarian. That doesn't mean vegetarians are Nazis, right? But when the Nazis agree with you, you should probably quadruple check your position. Did Glenn look like he quadruple checked his position? No. And so now it's interesting. By the way, after Jimmy's side put out all these old tapes of ours, some of the worst alt-right people like Cernovich jumped in and started spreading them around. And get a load of the alt-right and the alt-left meeting, okay? I mean, this thing has come full circle because the original guy who leaked blogs and tapes about me when I formed Justice Democrats was Mike Cernovich. So he's also the Pizzagate guy. So Pizzagate, Seth Rich conspiracy theory. So all of this is now beginning to make a lot of sense. So and you just heard me call Jimmy alt-left. And I decided that actually is, a pretty good term for them because they live in an alternate reality. There's the real left with Bernie Sanders and AOC and Nina Turner and Ryan Grimm and David Sirota and us, where we're trying to do something constructive in the world, where we're actually trying to pass bills. And yes, we even hold those people accountable as we did in the $15 minimum wage fight. We held Bernie Sanders and the Justice Democrats we helped get elected accountable because you need to pass the bills. Because guys, if we don't pass bills, all this is academic. It's about everybody's ego. Who cares about people's ego? Pass the goddamn bills, right? Nope. We got to tear everybody down. And in our alternate reality, the most important thing in the progressive movement is Jimmy Dore's feelings. That is so sad and sick. So they've easily earned that title of the alt-left. And by the way, if you want to be in there and you want to be, oh yeah, no, those things don't matter. The only thing that matters is the cult of Jimmy Dore, which I can't believe Glenn Greenwald has joined. Jesus, Glenn, you have no self-respect at all. A lot of people have lost their self-respect in this fight. It's really sad to see. Okay, and by the way, they say, and this is another thing that I have to confess drives me crazy. Oh, Young Turks and Jimmy are in this fight and it's a soap opera. We didn't start this. We don't do this on the regular show. We do this once a month after they've piled up all of these lies, all these falsehoods, etc. They do it every day, all day long. That's all they do. Guys, wake up. If you're not actually part of the alt-left, wakey. When's the last time they actually did anything constructive? All right. So now, this whole blackmail thing, I'm gonna come back to that because some people who used to be good, smart people have been duped by that too. So apparently this was a state secret and Anna was going to threaten to reveal it unless Jimmy did the things that she wanted. Now, she didn't write any of that. You saw it with your own eyes.
Yeah, she basically said that, like, oh, you've been doing all this stuff and we've turned a blind eye. That's going to change. That's not blackmail.
But not only that, apparently Jimmy had already revealed it. So I want to give credit to Matt Dimitri, who's found a lot of these old videos because Jimmy does live streams, but he's so unhinged, etc. He takes a lot of them down afterwards, realizing, oh my God, I've said terrible things. In fact, I don't know why he takes them down, and I don't care. Okay, but they found these, and so this is December of 2020. Okay, so this state secret that apparently that was going to get blackmailed, etc. Jimmy had already admitted. Watch.
One time I was in a news studio, and I won't say who did this, but someone wore such a short. No. Anyway.
You gave me a dirty look last week when I mentioned that. I thought it was funny.
I'm just saying. I've seen newscasters' naked asses in newsrooms. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying whose.
I think that when a nice news skirt.
Yes, a nice news skirt.
Yeah, the only thing worse than a nice news skirt is a nice news thong.
A news thong. It's a news.
Let me ask you a question. Is it a leftist thing to slut shame? Because like I believe that everybody should be able to dress however they want without being treated differently than what you would treat like any other person. Like if somebody wants to wear short skirt, somebody wants to wear a thong, somebody wants to wear like some, tight crop shirt, that's perfectly fine. Obviously not saying that Anna wore those things. She probably didn't, and Jimmy's probably exaggerating. But like people shouldn't be judged for like wanting to be sexy.
Bikini. I'm doing the news in my news thong.
People wear underwear.
Oh, boy.
Glenn also pretended that Jimmy was a principled person who was only talking about politics. Have you ever seen Jimmy? He's only talking about politics, and he never made it personal until Anna threatened to reveal this thing that Jimmy had revealed months ago. And why did Jimmy start making, and by the way, they were talking about Anna when they went into that spiel, okay? And so it was not unclear who he was referring to. It wasn't any random person at TYT, right? They were talking about Anna, and then they say all that. So if he's only talking about politics, why is he already trying to humiliate her? And as you see here, again, this is not a long time ago, this is now, and they're having the time of their life. Like she's doing news. Nah, we're gonna attack her and pretend that she's this and that and that she's here for our sexual amusement. You people sicken me. But now Glenn says, oh, I don't see it, I don't know. Here, watch.
People who have no evidence just throwing around these words trying to attach it to that person. That person is a groomer, that person is an abuser, that person harasses, that person is emotionally toxic, and instantly their reputation is destroyed. No evidence is required.
No evidence. He said it over and over and over again, full well knowing there was tremendous evidence that the guy he's defending had already said it. Whatever Glenn was, he's certainly not a journalist anymore. So, one more time, the evidence.
So when I did that, so she got really mad. She got humiliated. Her face turned red. She tried to insult me back, and it just fell flat. And she looked, bad.
She looked bad. By the way, that's a different clip. He said it 4 different times. I don't want to show you every time.
Yeah, like he sexually harassed Anna, and she's the one that looked bad. He wasn't bad for sexually harassing her. She's the one that was bad. That's what Jimmy's saying.
Right? But in the second version of events, he's like, oh, after I humiliated her, she said something back to me because she's a strong woman who didn't tolerate that nonsense. So, but it wasn't as funny as my news skirt line because I'm a comedian. By the way, where's the joke in that? Where's the news skirt joke? No, it's just to degrade someone. There's no joke other than the degradation, right? But she wasn't as funny as I think I am. By the way, let me just note for the record, I feel sick about all of this because I saw Jimmy during the break sometimes, and I thought this is just some rapport they had or something. Not just with the Ron Placones of the world, but with Steph. Yell at her that she didn't laugh at his jokes enough. And we've all seen it. The stage crew saw. We all saw it. Okay. Why didn't you laugh at my joke? People won't think it's funny if you don't laugh at it. Well, maybe it wasn't funny, Jimmy. And by the way, you'll see it going forward. The fake laughs. This is filled with nonstop fake laughs because Jimmy psychologically abuses these people. And that's why I'm mad at myself. you see that? I should have fired him right away. That's not a firing offense, but I should have known. That's a bad guy. That's a bad guy. He's wonderful to us, right? Like, why? Why is he great to me? He would give me gifts and stuff because I'm the boss. But when I'm not in the room, I'm looking up people's skirts, et cetera, et cetera. But I saw the Steph thing, and I should have known what kind of a disgusting character he is. You better laugh at my non-jokes, right? But Glenn can't tell. I don't know. Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? And then he says at the end, she looked bad. Yeah, I guess Glenn agrees. The victim looked bad, and my poor beloved friend, who is not emotionally toxic, okay, was the victim here. Jimmy's the victim. Look, you guys are seeing all the videos for yourselves. So if you think Jimmy's the victim, great, have at it, okay? I never want to see you guys. Don't watch the show. You could troll. I don't care about any of it. Unlike some other people, we don't care about theoretically lost subscribers or any of that. By the way, none of it is true. You can tell who's bots based on the percentage of people watching, and our viewership is as high as it's ever been. It's all a mirage. It's all a fraud. Some people get jittery over it. Oh my God, I lost. I'm so sorry, Jimmy. You want to be in that cult? Go be in that cult. You disgust me. Okay. So now, I mentioned earlier, Glenn's become a right winger, and you say, well, no. Or maybe he just doesn't believe in sexual harassment at large. Now he says, sometimes it happens, sometimes, I guess. But listen what he said here about an unrelated case.
Look what they did to Brett Kavanaugh with no evidence.
Yikes.
There was no evidence in the Brett Kavanaugh case. We all saw it. Glenn, what's
Glenn Greenwald defending Brett Kavanaugh? Wow.
wrong with you? But that lie doesn't even make any sense. We all saw it on national television. You saw Christine Blasey Ford. You saw her recounted. You saw the whole thing. We covered the test. Everybody covered the testimony. But apparently now Glenn thinks, no, there's no evidence against poor Brett Kavanaugh. Now you're beginning to get a sense of what happened to Glenn, okay? It's not me, it's him. He's saying it. Okay, last one from Glenn about Anna.
What Anna Kasparian did here with that little message, I've not said this about you, I've kept it to myself, but now that you're criticizing us, that's all gonna change. That is grotesque. That is ethically repugnant. But it is also commonplace in liberal left politics.
So Glenn is basically saying, oh, we should be allowed to, treat you however we want to. If we want to sexually harass you, that should be fine. But if you retaliate in any way, that's grotesque. And if you do retaliate, you're just liberal corporate media. Even though we know, like, sexual harassment goes unchecked in, like, mainstream media all the time.
Commonplace in liberal left politics. So apparently we're all guilty. Brett Kavanaugh is innocent, Jimmy Dore is innocent, but Anna is grotesque and morally repugnant. Guys, you all get to make a choice here. And if you say, yeah, I agree with Glenn, go have at it, Hoss. But it says something about you if you can't tell who's the morally repugnant one in this story. By the way, again, with she's grotesque. Go ahead.
She got humiliated in the middle of the newsroom, and I did it.
No evidence, right? So even after people pointed out, hey, Glenn, wait a minute, this doesn't look right. And well, of course there's evidence. Even the Jimmy's fans, everybody's seen it. Everybody's seen the evidence over and over again. Glenn put out a statement, quote, in the video, I made clear that I have absolutely no opinion on whether Dore behaved inappropriately in the way that Kasparian claims. I can't judge that.
Wait, but what about in the way that Jimmy Dore, claims that he acted? Like, the words coming out of Jimmy's own mouth are, very disgusting. How he describes, the way he treated Anna Kasparian, whether his side of the story is true or not. And, Jake said that, earlier, that he, exaggerated a lot of it.
He has absolutely no idea what happened. He just can't judge it at all. One more time.
She got humiliated in the middle of the newsroom, and I did it.
But Glenn, the great journalist, can't figure out who did it. He has absolutely no idea what happened. Going forward, guys, buyer beware. When you read Glenn or you watch him, you have no idea what he's hiding from you. I mean, if he could hide this overwhelming evidence and never mention it and keep saying, I don't know if it happened, but implying that it didn't happen. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. Even if you agree with his interpretation of Jimmy's comments, and if you say, hey, go get him, Jimmy, we'll look up everybody's skirt and do it at work, it's great, I love it. And you're right wing or left wing, it doesn't matter, right? But you can't say that Glenn didn't know what happened. Glenn knows exactly what happened. Okay, last thing is this, guys. People change. And so, God knows I've changed. So when Cernovich found those old blogs and people go back to old videos and stuff, I cringe at that stuff. And I've apologized for it, by the way, probably now with the original Justice Democrat controversy, with when I ran for office and now, I've probably apologized dozens of times for it. You know why? Because, and I deleted those blogs 15 years ago. Why? Because I don't believe it anymore. And that's embarrassing, and I wish I hadn't said that. See how easy it is to say that, right? And I hope that I've changed for the better, right? I don't know if Jimmy was always this way, and now I'm worried that he was, right? And I didn't see it. Glenn, I thought was a great journalist. And either he wasn't, and all those old stories, I have no idea what he hid and didn't hide, right? Or he changed. Now it's up to you guys again, one last time, to make the decision. Who changed for the better? Who changed for the worse? All right. Going forward, we're going to do a news show. Every day we do tons and tons of stories that you should know about. I'll give you one quick example, asset recycling. That's selling off the country piece by piece. It's an infrastructure deal. Trump wanted to do it. Biden is actually executed in the bipartisan plan. You should know about that, but I can give you dozens of these examples, and we do every day on the show. But you could tune into these clowns, these alt-left guys who are just constantly talking about their feelings and accusing everybody in their path of being disloyal to Jimmy Dore. Why? Why does anybody have to be loyal to that monster, that clown? What a sad, sad state of affairs. If you're in that camp, good luck. And I believe in change. I believe in redemption. And I hope you change. But if you don't want to, that's your business. But, you know, everybody says they're always done with it. But God knows what other toxic thing they're going to make up next. But for now, this is the end of this chapter. And it's certainly the end of any respect I had for Glenn Greenwald, who's become a very, very sad embarrassment. Thanks for watching The Young Turks.
Okay. Yeah, a few things I wanted to say is I've watched TYT for like a good 5 years, I think, 5-6 years, and I watched back whenever Jimmy was on Aggressive Progressive, and I thought he was he wasn't my favorite person, but I thought he was okay back then. I watched Aggressive Progressive from time to time. I tried watching the Jimmy Dore show back then. I couldn't get into it because he yelled more on his own show. But it seemed like over the years he got progressively more reactionary, and what the one memory that kind of stands out for me whenever I think of Jimmy is I think back to whenever Trump's collusion with Russia was the big thing in the news, and Jimmy was saying some outrageous stuff like how there was just like no way that like Trump could have possibly colluded or like done any sort of collusion with Russia when we knew that there was this meeting in Trump Tower with a bunch of like Trump officials meeting with and his sons with Russian operatives, and like they didn't get anything out of it, but that doesn't make it like not a crime. And then later we found out that Trump even colluded with like Ukraine, and nobody really said anything about that, like other than like they like talked about the phone call, but nobody ever said it was like him like colluding, or he never got that was like one of the things that they like impeached him for, but they didn't. I don't remember them referring to it as collusion, but it just seeing Jimmy go from like a decent news person to just like being this like reactionary troll or whatever. It's just really sad, and I hope nobody gets trapped or gets tricked by him into going down that road. Anyway, I'm getting tired. My brain is starting to slow down, so I'm gonna try to call it a night. And say if you're watching this on Twitch, please hit the follow button. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit like and subscribe. And thank you very much, and have a stellar night.